Hello. In a year which has seen much disruption, anxiety and upheaval, the Christian Institute has been working hard to promote biblical Christianity in the public square and to defend Christian freedom.
Welcome to our review of the issues that made the headlines in 2020. In January, a new report revealed that 260 million Christians worldwide are suffering high levels of persecution, 15 million more than last year. The Open Doors World Watch List revealed North Korea is still the worst place in the world to be a Christian, but that persecution is on the rise in China. In Wales, a bill to criminalise parents who smack their children was given the go-ahead by the Welsh Parliament. Amendments to mitigate the most damaging aspects of the legislation were all rejected, and parents will be at risk of prosecution from 2022.
In February, the Christian Institute warned Warwickshire County Council it was prepared to take legal action over its explicit relationships and sex education policy. The Council's policy for primary schools incorporated the controversial All About Me programme, which told children that gender is on a spectrum and that transgender pupils have the right to use whichever toilet or changing room they prefer.
In March, Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced a nationwide lockdown to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. Workers were sent home, people were told not to meet with one another, and we were all largely confined to our homes. Church buildings were also required to close for the first time in over 800 years. At the end of the month, the government introduced the UK's most liberal abortion law in Northern Ireland, despite a consultation revealing 79% of respondents opposed it. The new law went far beyond the rest of the UK, allowing abortion up to 12 weeks without restriction, up to 24 weeks for a wide range of reasons, and up to birth on the grounds of disability.
In April, the Institute gave its backing to a Christian minister who sued a Belfast hotel after he was ordered to halt a meeting about traditional marriage. Staff at the Balmoral Hotel interrupted the event attended by more than 50 members of the public after a hotel guest complained. Later in the month, parents expressed delight after Warwickshire Council dropped its controversial sex education programme. This followed the Christian Institute's legal threat, pointing out that the programme misapplied equality, human rights and education law. April also saw a ban on using credit cards to gamble in England, Wales and Scotland. The ban applies to both online and in-store betting, but not the National Lottery.
In May, the High Court heard the case of evangelical fostering agency Cornerstone in its legal battle against Ofsted. The agency, which is being backed by the Christian Institute, was previously rated good across all areas, but in 2019 inspectors downgraded it to requires improvement and labelled the organisation's Christian ethos discriminatory. Cornerstone's lawyer told the court that Ofsted had misapplied equality law and that this amounted to an abuse of Ofsted's functions. Later in May, the Scottish Government's hate crime bill was branded a threat to free speech. The draft proposals sought to criminalise words or behaviours perceived to be abusive and likely to stir up hatred. In response, the Christian Institute launched the Free to Disagree campaign, which is supported by groups including the National Secular Society and the Adam Smith Institute.
The Northern Ireland Assembly voted for a motion rejecting Westminster's liberal abortion law at the beginning of June. The result did not change the law, but made clear to Westminster that the regulations are not wanted by Northern Ireland's elected representatives. It was revealed later in the month that the NHS had changed its guidance on puberty-blocking drugs for gender-confused children to acknowledge some of the dangers. While its website had originally claimed the drugs were fully reversible, it was changed to admit that little is known about the long-term side effects.
Churches were permitted to reopen for public worship in Northern Ireland from the end of June and the rest of the UK in July, following more than 3 months of closure. Regular services were able to resume, subject to safety measures including social distancing, in a move that was welcomed by the Christian Institute. Also in July, the High Court announced its verdict on the Cornerstone case, in which Ofsted tried to force the agency to work with non-evangelicals and abandon its religious ethos. The judge ruled that the fostering agency can work according to its statement of faith, and Ofsted was required to amend its inspection report. However, the court also said Cornerstone cannot require its carers to abide by its Christian beliefs on appropriate sexual conduct.
The Scottish Government's hate crime bill continued to amass critics over the course of the year, and in August they were joined by actor and comedian Rowan Atkinson. Alongside more than 20 other well-known writers, actors and campaigners, Atkinson signed a letter telling the SNP its bill risks stifling freedom of expression. But the bill was welcomed by the convener of Atheist Scotland, who said it presented an opportunity to report the Bible for so-called hate speech. Ian Stewart said he would use the bill to monitor all holy books and sermons and report them to Police Scotland for criminal investigation.
In September, parents were warned over explicit sex education materials being used in some secondary schools. The resource, created by the Proud Trust, features graphic activities, including teaching about sex acts using body part dice. The guide was criticised for downplaying immoral sexual behaviours and for promoting radical gender ideology. But in a welcome move later in the month, guidance published by the Department for Education said schools in England must not use gender stereotypes to tell children they might be transgender. It said materials suggesting that children who do not conform to gender stereotypes are trans should not be used, and that schools should not work with external agencies that produce such material. There was more good news at the end of the month as Reverend Harry Coulter received an unreserved apology from the hotel which had halted his meeting on marriage. Management expressed their sincere regret and committed to retrain staff to respect human rights.
The following month, the NHS's Gender Identity Development Service was challenged at the High Court for giving puberty blockers to young people. As a teen, Kira Bell was given the drugs and cross-sex hormones to make her appear male, but later realised her attempted transition was a mistake. She said gender confusion should be treated with mental health support, and launched the case to prevent the NHS from continuing to prescribe the life-altering drugs. The Care Quality Commission began an investigation into the use of Do Not Resuscitate forms during the coronavirus pandemic. Its preliminary report found there had been a blanket and inappropriate use of the orders during the pandemic, which they said could have resulted in potentially avoidable death.
In November, an LGBT member of the Church of England's General Synod accused Christian unions and Bible-believing churches in Oxford of homophobia. Jane Ozanne publicly applauded an article which criticised those who hold to biblical teaching on sexual ethics. She said, "We can't allow this harmful practice of telling LGBT people who are in relationships that they are sinful to continue." Later, the English and Welsh governments were threatened with legal action after they banned public worship in churches during temporary partial lockdowns. Amid pressure from church leaders, MPs and the Christian Institute, the bans were eventually lifted. And at the end of the month, a pro-life midwifery student received an apology and a settlement after she was banned from a hospital placement over her beliefs. Julia Rinkiewicz was suspended following her involvement with the University of Nottingham's Students for Life Society and subjected to a 4-month investigation. She was cleared of wrongdoing and has received an apology from the university.
And finally, in December, a CEO and church began legal action against a multi-million-pound trust over religious discrimination with the help of the Christian Institute. Stirling Free Church had a contract for venue hire torn up by the Robertson Trust after the chairwoman objected to its biblical teaching on marriage. CEO Kenneth Ferguson, an elder of the church, was disciplined despite recusing himself from negotiations over the hire. He was dismissed from his post shortly afterwards. The NHS suspended new referrals for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for under 16s after the High Court ruled young people cannot consent to the treatments. Judges said it was highly unlikely children aged 13 and under could ever genuinely consent, and very doubtful 14 and 15-year-olds could. In Northern Ireland, a judge commissioned to review hate crime legislation recommended major restrictions to free speech. In his report, Judge Desmond Marinan said free speech protections for those who disagree with same-sex marriage should be scrapped, and that hate crime law should be extended to transgender identity without the benefit of a free speech clause.
Before we leave, we'd like to take a moment to remember some of the well-known believers who have passed into glory this year. In April, family campaigner Norman Wells and author John J. Murray both went to be with the Lord after contracting COVID-19 at the height of the pandemic. A friend of the Institute, Norman had been director of the Family Education Trust since 2004 and had also served on the board of the Coalition for Marriage. Reverend Murray wrote a number of Christian books, as well as speaking for the Institute on several occasions.
And in July, J.I. Packer, one of the most influential Christian leaders of modern times, passed into glory, aged 93. A prominent preacher and teacher, he is perhaps best known for his book Knowing God and his work as general editor of the English Standard Version of the Bible.
Thank you for standing with us through this challenging year. Your prayers and support are invaluable to us. We give thanks to God and trust Him to provide for us and for you in 2021.
From Angus and me, and everyone at the Christian Institute, we hope you have a blessed new year.
Goodbye.